All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to another episode of the MHP, where we are poignant on the mental health of the Black community, hyper focused on Black men. Today, I have Miss, let me get it right, Malara, Miss Malara Green, Mrs. Malara Green, here with me today. Of course, always thank you for your time. I know people in this industry, y'all are booked and busy. I know, I just had my session yesterday and he was like on it. So thank you for your time, man. I appreciate it. But let the people know exactly who you are, or why you're here, why it's important for you to be here. Give them whatever you would like them to know.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Malara Green, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker by trade, but I'm honestly a servant at heart. I have become who I believe God destined me to be. How did I land into this space is because I know what it feels like to need someone. I know what it feels like to not have the look or the socioeconomic status or the family background that says she needs help. So then people didn't help me. So when I was 17, I had chose death when someone else chose life for me. And 3 seconds before I could put the solution up to my mouth, my dad knocked down the door, and that was CPR to my life, my dreams, and my goals. And at that moment, I promised myself I was going to be that for other people, because I knew how it felt to say, like, look, I don't want to do this anymore, but then have someone save me, that recharged me. And I wanted to do that for people. My purpose and my passion right now is to get into Hollywood and shift and change their mindsets and pull them out of their hell so that they can create heaven on earth for us. I'm a big believer of what we watch, what we listen to, what we read. It does something to our spirit. So if I can tap into the industry that does most of that here on earth, then I feel like I can create a heaven where some people are living through their own hell. Right now, I am a business owner, entrepreneur of M Green Enterprises, LLC. Where I serve as a psychotherapist, confidence coach, Reiki master. I'm a trainer. I speak, I inspire people and transform people. Our mission is to provide preventative services to lower the rate of individuals who need mental health facilities or post-reactionary care. Here in America, we are very reactionary. We want to wait until the third time when you're about to end it all for us to actually provide assistance. And I want to be the person that breaks that taboo, talk about what mental health is, how to maintain it, and then also provide people with a safe space to just be who they are, regardless of what your background is. So that is me, essentially, in a nutshell. I am just someone who's out here to serve as the bridge between people, caterpillar, and butterfly moment, because I believe we all should live our life full. So when we die empty.
Okay, so I had my segue into, but when you're having a conversation, you gotta, be in the moment, be present. That's one thing my first therapist told me. My second therapist is telling me you have the feeling and then you react later. The actions come later. But so you said something poignant, and I know something about safe space. We just met a couple of weeks ago. This is only our third time talking, so it's up to you. I know you know safe spaces, but that instance in that moment where you said you didn't choose life, you chose the opposite of life. I think there are some people, mental health is still stigmatized, and there's still some misconstruence in this area. So if it's up to you, if you feel safe at that moment, how long did it take? I think people assume that it's fleeting, like it's in the moment, and people are like, well, why did she do that? Why did he do that? Robin Williams is a perfect example. He's a comedian. He makes you laugh. He's laughing. He took his own life in an instant. Everybody's so confused. Like, so let people know, what are some things that gets misconstrued? What does the feeling of either depression actually look like? And then it'll go from there.
Absolutely. So suicide is just not I just thought about it and I'm going to do it. There's things that typically leads up to that. And for me, the thing that hit home was when Miss USA jumped off the building recently. And the reason why, because what I kept hearing everybody say is, well, she had everything she wanted. She just won Miss USA. She, had her dream job. There was things that she had that life should have been great. That is not what it is. Suicide comes from a place where, as human beings, we're meant to feel whole. But in this life, it's like you're walking around a rose bush where, the roses look beautiful, but there's thorns. So if you move the wrong way, the wrong situation happened, a trauma happened, an experience happened, someone says the wrong thing at the wrong time when you're already having a tough day, those things begin to pierce your body. And what I tell people all the time, people say, well, Malara is like, everybody benefits from me. And Robin Williams was one of my favorite comedians before he passed away. So when that happened, it was like people couldn't understand why he would do it.
So confused.
And it's because life was happening and these thorns are now piercing him. And when the thorns pierce you, your purpose still bleeds out. So everybody else is benefiting from your magic, but you're getting emptied and you feel empty. So for my own personal journey, my first ever suicidal thought was when I was 13 years old and I was getting ready for gym. That was when I had found out that I was morbidly obese. I was 215 pounds at the age of 13. And that played on me. And I remember the moment where I felt disgusting, the moment where I felt like I was basically damaged goods. So I'm sitting here, I'm 13 years old, it's gym time, and here what we had, they made us do a second physical at school. So we had to get on the scale. So I got on the scale, and I remember my teacher being like, Malara, do you know that you're 215 pounds? I already knew because my doctor already told me, but the way that she asked me made me feel like there was something wrong with me. And from that moment, I did not like what I saw in the mirror. So imagine waking up every day, looking at yourself in the mirror, the one thing you can't run away from. And then that messaging of I'm not enough, I'm ugly, I need to lose weight, I need to change who I am. No matter how great of a person I was, that internal messaging was there because of that one situation. But because we don't live in a world that talks about that one minor situation, that minor situation becomes something bigger. So now it becomes the first thought of, man, life is so hard. And then you keep living, something else happens. Now, oh man, life is so hard. So you get to a point where it's like, well, nobody's ever really asked me how I'm feeling, because on the outside looking in, it looks like I should have it all together. Like for me, I come from a 2-parent household. We were middle class. I was going to church. I was active and involved. My parents was there supporting me, but there was this internal dialogue because of the trauma I've experienced from being exposed to sexual things at 3 years old to being 13, dealing with my weight, and then going the opposite of it, being sexually assaulted at 16. Like there was things that happened that although my image looked amazing, my mind was going through those trauma moments. So then when I turned 17, those trauma moments, what was playing in my mind, not my support system, not who is around me. Like I know people always say suicide is selfish. Suicide is not selfish. When people make that decision, they're not thinking about you. It's a personal thing. I'm tired of hurting. I'm tired of not being seen. I'm tired of people not just asking me, am I okay? And it doesn't have a look. It doesn't have a socioeconomic status. It doesn't have a backdrop. It literally is that person's internal messaging based off of what they experienced. And if I never dealt with it, if nobody's ever talked to me about it, and therapy, let's be real, is still taboo, especially in the African-American community. If I never let it out, it's going to rot in me from the core until I can't take it anymore. And that's kind of where suicide comes from. So hopefully that answered that question, but I just wanted to give you a broad view of how people can get there and how can we help people. Allow for them to share. Parents, really deal with your kids. Like if your kids is starting to have depression, like I was diagnosed with major depression when I was 16 after I was sexually assaulted, but I dealt with it from 13 years old. But because no one asked, they didn't know that I hated myself. They didn't know that it took everything in me to get up in the morning, because no one had the gumption to ask, how are you feeling? Not just how you're doing, but how are you feeling right now? What are you thinking about? What is your thought life? Like, parents, sit your kids down and ask those things. I asked my daughter, she's only 6. I say, baby girl, what are you thinking about? I may see that she's overwhelmed. Instead of me telling her to stop crying and all that, I'm like, well, what are you thinking about right now that's making you feel that way?
I think,
and then lower that.
I think us as millennials are doing a great job with a lot. I'm also, so some of the things I have to, for the sake of conversation, for understanding, I was in the Army. So as a Black male, my upbringing is vastly different. And I was in the Army. So I say that to say a lot of people have different experiences, and it's all a learning curve. And I was about to ask, like, when that gym teacher told you that, of course, she could see how you looked and perception, but some people just don't have the knowledge of understanding, having the soft skills. Soft skills are actually on majority of job applications, and yet people still can't comprehend what that means and how to convey messages, how to read the room, how to read energy. And it's a learning curve. We're getting there. Mental health just got popular, just started popping. As Black therapists as a whole just started popping, what, 2 years ago? 3 years ago, right? I mean, the hardest thing I'm trying to work on is grace, just trying to understand, like, oh, that person doesn't know that person is ignorant, and not to be negative. There's a lot of, I mean, I'm not gonna get into that. That's a lot of PC culture going down that road. But you are right in the sense of, sometimes I'm like, just leave people alone. There was no need for her to say that. You're right. Like, for ask the question, like, do you know you're overweight? It's like mirrors don't exist. Like, I just see myself every morning. So, I understand. Who are you to ask? Okay. So I've had, in a moment of transparency, that's another thing they're just teaching me. I've only had 2 tussles with depression. I had one when I was in marriage. So we lived on the 4th floor of a building, right? And of course we had a balcony. And it was one I was dealing with. It's about compounding. So you're right about that. It's like things happen and things compile. It's not like, for me, I thought I had so much mental fortitude to just get up every day and just work. And another thing in this country that I want to talk about later is the whole protector and provider rhetoric. That weighed so heavy on me growing up as a man. And on top of that, as a Black man, it's like, that's the only thing anyone ever really talked to me about as far as growing up. Like, the only thing people pressed upon me was, you better get a job. You better make enough to provide for a family. And that was it. Like, that's the only type of conversations I really had with adults. That's the only thing anyone worried about me doing or anything as a whole. So at a time, I was in the Army for about 3 years at this time. I was dealing with going overseas, dealing with bullets flying over my head, going overseas to sleep in cots for 30 months out of 30 days at a time. I'm training high octane, doing shit all day, breaking my body, running with guns, 30-pound packs on my back, doing all this Army shit, that shit you see on TV. And I'm at the same time, I'm trying to live and breathe life into a marriage, into someone I'm living with. And of course, I'm not perfect. There's a bunch of BS that I did that I'm trying to heal and create coping mechanisms for in therapy. But I got to a breaking point where I just walked outside and I looked over the balcony. And honestly, I didn't say jump. But when I looked over the ledge, I looked at the ground and I said, in my head, I said to myself, there was a gazebo. So I'm at the 4th floor. There's a gazebo and then there's the ground. I'm like, if you jump to that gazebo and then jump on the ground, you could probably be in the hospital and then you could chill. And then as soon as that happened, I was like, why did you think that? I was in therapy at the time. Thank God. That was my only saving grace. So I had the wherewithal to have the out-of-body experience, to look at myself and say, why are you thinking that? And I just was exhausted. I was burnt out. Burnout is real. And so for some reason, my mind was like, if you're in a hospital bed, if you're in a hospital, people are going to stop asking you to do things. You're not going to have to work. Nobody's going to ask you, where's this money at? What happens with insurance? What's good with the car? I need money for this. I need money. people won't ask you that because of sympathy hits in. Like, you're in a hospital. Why are you going to ask someone for money in the hospital? My mind, the chemistry in my brain just somehow linked that to make sense. It logically it does, but why am I going to hurt myself, right? So that's my story for people to believe that. So you're right. Suicide is not something that's like a fleeting moment. It's a compounding type of thing. Okay.
Yep.
So moving forward, I have my own coping mechanisms. Thank God for therapy. And usually I say this at the end. I save this until the end, but flow of conversation. So people aren't gonna watch this episode and be like, "Oh, I need to go to therapy," and they're gonna go to their insurance and find a therapist. But what are some self-care tips / coping, not coping mechanisms? I don't know if you could tell coping mechanisms, but what are some things that people should look at that if they have a thought, or what are some thoughts that they should look out for? What are some actions that they might do that could let them know, like, oh, this is kind of, I don't want to say abnormal, but you know what I mean? This isn't normal streamline of thinking.
So it's two different sides. You have those things that can appear to be good, that are normalized. So like that person that is the goal setter. So they always have to be doing. Like, if I sit here, I set this goal, I'm not going to celebrate that. I'm going to set another goal and then another goal. And then it's like they're constantly doing because they're running. They don't allow themselves to sit down. That's something to be on the lookout for. Are you allowing yourself to rest? Do you have balance? Or am I doing for some reason? So I'll give you an example. For me, I was a doer because, again, when I grew up, it was like I felt invisible. Like, things were great, but I felt invisible. So the more I did, the more I would hear my parents, continue to like be happy, but it wasn't celebratory. And anytime that I didn't do something, then I heard about it. So it was like, well, if I got an A, I heard nothing. But if I got a C on something, I'm going to hear something about it. If my room was clean, I didn't hear anything. But if I had a moment where maybe I went to bed and I had homework and it wasn't clean, oh, you need to clean your room. If the bathroom was clean, nothing. But if it wasn't clean, I heard something. So in my mind, it was, well, if I do things, then it make people happy. So now I have this overachiever mentality of I got to continue to do and do and do and do. So now, yes, I'm 29 and I have all these certification and credentials, but I haven't actually lived. That is something that people got to be mindful of. Those things that appear to be good, that's not necessarily good. Or that person that's always showing up for people. Like, if I constantly feel like I got to pour out to maintain a relationship, then that is a sign that there's something going on, because in your mind, you feel like you're not good enough. The only way that I can have this relationship is by doing for them. Then you have the negative side of things. And what those negative side of things can look like is, everybody likes to talk about substance abuse, but substance abuse to me is, even as a substance abuse counselor, is different for every person. So if you're utilizing that substance to numb the pain, run away from something, or it's a coping strategy, essentially, then that's something to be on the lookout for. Thoughts that you need to look out for is, let's say you are living out your dreams. You finally met all your goals, right? And you're at that dream job, you got that dream family, all of that, but you still don't feel good enough in your mind. And you feel like any minute now, this is going to be over. Any minute now, this is going to be taken away from me. Like, any of those negative thoughts of I'm not valuable, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, nobody cares about me, I'm not lovable, all those negative thoughts, we got to become more aware of our thinking. So I'll tell people, like, if you find yourself with an intense emotion, simply ask yourself, what am I thinking about? So in those moments when I'm really sad, because I still deal with depression, like, it just don't go away. I might be a therapist, but it doesn't go away. So there's going to be moments where depression may say hello, and I got to sit back and say, well, what thoughts am I thinking about right now? So what I would encourage people to do is get in the habit of really reflecting on what you're doing. Another thing that I do is, let's say if someone passes away, or if it's my birthday, I would ask people in my circle, hey, how am I presenting? What are some things that you learned from me? What are some things that I can do better? because it allows for me to know if my intent that I have is really being translated. Or am I being that people pleaser? Or am I being that person that constantly feel like I got to be a human doer instead of a human being? Like, what am I presenting myself as? And I do that so that I can grow, because those around me, when I'm telling them, it's not as a critique or criticism. It's more like, hey, I want to make sure that mentally you're good. I ask people all the time, how can I show up for you? What are you thinking about? What's going on? Because if you are more aware of your thought life, then you'll be aware of the behaviors that you're doing as a result of your trauma compared to behaviors that I'm doing as I'm living. So that is like one, I would say, self-care tip, is to begin to reflect on how are you each day and being honest. And it's okay to not be okay. If I acknowledge that I'm not okay, then I can change it. But if I say everything's okay, I'm not going to change it. And then the second part of kind of your question is, what are some things that people can do? So I'm a stickler of find what you can do daily to practice. So when you are having a moment where maybe your trauma is triggered, or maybe you're depressed or sad or something happened, then you will have that to pull from. Coping strategies do not work when you only use them in the heat of the moment, because your body is used to routine and practice. So things that you can implement are things like exercise. So that can be yoga or strength training or walking. That could be the music selection that you have currently. All I listen to is affirmation music. And what that is basically individuals that have mastered sound frequencies, and they put a song to it with positive language. So I'm really big on what I allow for things to like feed me. Like, my favorite genre is R&B, but when you go and actually listen to the songs, all they talking about is cheating, having a side chick, and everything else. I can't do that if I want to last forever. So I've learned to listen to people like Londrell, Jiminelle, Tony Jones, Chris and T. There's a lot of, especially for our community, all of those individuals are African American. You can go right on YouTube and listen to them, and they're actually minister to your spirit. Other things can be like energy work. I am a Reiki master. I'm actually trying to transition over to it being more healing, so it's more Holy Spirit led. But Reiki is healing through hand placements, and it's laced in the Buddhist culture and Chinese culture. And it talks about healing your energy orbs. You have chakra things for people who are into energy work. You can do your yoga, whatever. But then also what I tell people is you have to have something in each dimension of your life. Those dimensions is your spiritual dimension, mental, emotional, physical, social, and cash flow. So spiritually, what are you connected to? What's your power source? I'm not going to tell you what to believe in, but what is that thing that when I am depleted, I can connect to? That's the you prior to being programmed by the world. That's the you prior to your family lineage. That's the you prior to all that. That's the authentic you. How are you getting tapped into that? So when everybody else is going about their way, you cannot run from you. So you need something that's going to actually ground you. For me, that's God. For other people, it may be something else. That mental and that spiritual, I meant the mental and emotional. The reason why I split those two up is because your mental well-being is what you think about yourself in the world, where your emotional well-being is how you experience the world as a result of how you think. So if I can actually have something coping wise there, that's why therapy exists. Not just when all hell breaks loose, but normally. I'm a therapist that go to therapy weekly. So then when things come up, good or bad, I have somewhere to dump my thoughts. So then someone outside of me can say, Malara, that's a rational thought, or that's not rational. So then my emotion, my experience can be one of joy and happiness and peace. That doesn't mean that I don't have sad moments. It doesn't mean that I don't get angry. It just means that I have a space that helps me think about what I'm thinking about. The physical well-being is not just about what's on the scale or losing weight. It's all to do with what am I going to do with this meat suit? This meat suit is what holds all this magic, right? But if it's broken, how can I fulfill my purpose? So it's deeper than I just want to eat well. I just want to work out. It's more of where am I putting this body, the environments, the places, the things that I'm doing with it. Am I actually going outside to start my car, or am I going to all my neighbors and changing their tires, their oil, and things like that? And then when I finally say, man, I got an opportunity, it's time for me to go with it, and I start the car, it ain't going to start. That's what I talk about with the physical. Social, I say that we're all like cell phones. So eventually this is going to say 20%. And when I go back to that spiritual side, I say, to me, God is that power strip in the wall. It always has energy and power in it, whether something's plugged into it or not. But I can't just place my phone up to that port and think it's going to start charging. I have to have a cord. So who do I have in my life that charge me up? So when I get to 20%, I can get back to 100 because I have the right iPhone charger for my iPhone, not an Android charger for my iPhone. Like, I have the right people in tow. And then cash flow is bonus. I'm not just talking about going and making money, but I'm talking about, what are you doing? How are you living out your purpose that flows money to you with least resistance? So when you have something in each of those dimensions, then it allows for you in real time to live fully.
Okay. So, my timer. But anyway, okay. For if any nerds watch this and they're gonna be like, we got wireless charging. It's not what she means. It's an analogy. Just run with it. Let's come on now. We're trying to teach. Speak about PTSD and trauma, and I think I've divulged this, but everyone may have a different vantage point. Everyone has a different POV. You know what I mean? I think us as a diaspora within America experience trauma and PTSD a little differently, because I think it does span over time. I think us as human beings, our chemistry and our DNA evolves, but in a certain area and proximity, it evolves in a certain way. It could be degradative. We could evolve kind of backwards, and so to speak. You know what I mean? And so through therapy, I figured out in my own way. But again, I always say, you don't have to divulge any of your personal sessions, anything, personal stories or whatnot. But as a whole, if you do have clients that are of the African diaspora, if you've thought about it, how do we experience or execute, how do we project our trauma specifically to Black people and African Americans in this country?
So one thing about our amazing community is we are resilient. But I hate that word, because when we use resilient, that gives an excuse for us to continue to have a BS experience. So, for example, when I do get people of color that come and see me as a therapist, it's because it's so late, they're already bleeding. They're at the point where they need surgery because trauma has been normalized. And I'll give you an example. So I know people hate for us to start at slavery because we were kings and queens in our land and all that, but we don't have all of that history. All I really know is when we think about slavery, we got to think about the fact that we were never taught how to be family. We were taught how to be servants. So our families were broken apart. So here we have where, yes, I may have a husband, I may have a wife, but there were times where the wife had to see the husband be victimized. Or once I have enough children to populate this actual place, then they separated the family. The husband was sent somewhere and the wife stayed, or the kids were sent somewhere. Like, they broke up our families. Then we entered the place where now we got our rights back. So now we can sort of kind of be family. But then there's this thing that was called the New Deal. And what the New Deal created was no man in a house rule. What that was social workers were night workers, where if I came to your house and if there was any sign of a male, an extra toothbrush, a brush, a pair of shoes, a scent of cologne, you and your family was kicked out. So now it was, dang, I can't even be family. So then those people who were family, we created the what happens in this house stays in this house rule, because at least now we can be family. So if your granddaddy touched you, don't say nothing, because at least we can be family. If auntie was a little crazy, don't say nothing, because at least we can still be family. And that has now created a generation of us being quiet. So when we deal with trauma, it's so normalized because, well, auntie was sexually assaulted too. Why are you saying something? Your daddy lost his job too, so why are you saying something? That person went into the military and they actually did Vietnam, and it was a vet, and it was a this, and it was a that, and they came back and they're quiet about it. Why are you going to say something? So now we're living in a generation where people are now speaking up, but it's once they're bleeding. is once they now need emergency surgery of the heart and of the mind, or they're about to commit suicide, because we don't talk about trauma. Trauma is not just a military disease. Trauma is not just someone who was sexually assaulted and abused. It can be something as small as if your mom fed your dad before you when you were growing up, but you were real hungry after school. That could have been traumatic for you. So what we have to do is dismantle this thing of trauma is X, Y, and Z, and it's boxes that you check. No, trauma is anything that shows up when normal life is happening, but you remember it. That's what trauma is. So when I get people of our community that comes, it's at the point where I'm really doing emergency surgery on their heart and their minds, because they've carried it so much over the years that when they do come, it's like, I don't want to tell anybody I've been victimized or trauma. I just want to talk about the fact I don't like my husband. I just want to talk about the fact that my kids getting on my nerves. But why are they? And it's because there's things in your past that has happened that you haven't dealt with. So I tell people, take your cape off. You can have your Superman cape on all day, but if I take it off, it's going to be drenched in blood because you ain't dealt with what was going on. So that's how I work with our community. I normalize the fact that we have a history of not being able to be family, history of not being able to be our authentic self, but eventually we got to stop using those excuses. And that's what I would say. One thing COVID has done is allow for us to have the opportunity to really begin to say, I'm not okay, and get the help that we need. So that's what I do with my community. I normalize the fact that in the beginning, people ain't care about how we felt because we were just property. But we're at a point now where people in our community, like myself, is now saying, look, sis, look, bro, sit with me and let's actually go through this thing so that you can live heaven on earth and not hell, that we don't have to live out our past anymore. We can do something different in our future.
Okay. That tidbit you said about the no man in the house, when I figured that out about a year and a half ago, I was like, oh, and someone else taught me when Mr. Hampton, Fred Hampton, I forgot what they call him. They call him the general. But when Mr. Hampton, he created those programs for food, clothing, and I don't know if he did shelter, but he had programs to where he would bring people, feed the community, teach the community. Someone said, and I think I looked this up to be true, when America, the government created WIC, they stole that from Mr. Hampton somehow. So, he was executed. So CIA operatives were watching him. I think while they were watching him and they were doing their updates and telling the government, I think they took what he was doing, they created WIC. Of course, the purpose, like you said, was it was a part of the no man in the home. When they thought of that, they created WIC to say, okay, we got to create a way to keep them dependent, keep them while this man is supposed to be the protecting provider. This is those times. We're going to take the provider out. We got to keep a way to keep the woman away from him, keep them separated. They created WIC. They created food stamps. I mean, I think everyone likes to make a joke about being woke, but this is some type of stuff y'all should be figuring out and reading and understanding that y'all are just perpetuating a self-destructive cycle that this country put you in. Like, we're just running a rat race. And we're over here I call it trauma vomiting. We're over here just throwing up acid on each other and pointing the finger with this useless gender war. I mean, whatever. But to pivot once again, you said something, again, very poignant about you. At the beginning, you spoke of your experience as a young woman dealing with abuse. And you said, we as Black people are seen as property too. So I want to pivot. This podcast, of course, is focused on men, but hyper-focused on Black men, right? And lately, for the past about year and a half, I've been hearing this phrase, protect Black women, right? And so prior when we spoke, I think you said that is part of your niche is speaking with women and helping them transition in a myriad of ways, right? Mm-hmm. And so for some reason, for the past couple of months, I've been having a couple of transparent conversations with Black women in specific. And they've been telling me how it's pretty regular for them to be either assaulted or harassed. And I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to say I'm a man that's just like, I don't believe them. I'll be honest and transparent. I would say I thought it wasn't happening as rapidly and as easily as what I've been hearing and seeing on the internet. And I was completely and utterly wrong. Like, it happens passively. and happens actively. I don't think we as men, if men are going to be watching this, I think it's very important and vital for us to understand what we're doing, what we're not doing, how things could maybe give off and perceived by women. Like we're ignorant in many ways. So the rest of this interview is going to be pertaining to Black women, specifically in America. So now, to be clear from a professional standpoint and a point of view, what does the phrase mean? Explain it to men ear. Well, explain it to us. What does it mean to protect Black women? What do those three words in conjunction mean?
Protect Black women. I think what that means is giving us the opportunity to not be all the things. One thing that us as women have become because of the things that have been created, like the no man in the house rule, going back to slavery and those different pieces, we were the ones that had to end up holding up the house. So if the man is not in the house, then who's taking care of the kids? You know, if the man is not in the house, who's actually doing the work? And a lot of the government programs, they want you to have a job. So I got to have a job, have a kid, take care of the kid. My spouse can't be here, or they're going to take care, take our housing, and then I have my own dreams and aspirations. I want to be a business owner. I want to do this. I want to do that. And in the space of us doing all the things, now is this energy of, well, Black women just independent is because we were forced to be.
Literally.
Not because we wanted to be, but we were forced to be. And it's very difficult for us to put to the side this hard exterior because remember, our protector and our provider was not able to be there. So when we're talking about protect Black women, I think what it means is as the spaces and places are shifting and changing, our protectors have to learn how to protect. And we have to learn how to soften our guard a little bit. But again, your question at first was kind of like, not even question, but you were saying how you didn't at first believe that many women were sexually assaulted or that many women had that experience. So now that things are shifting and our people can be in the home and we can have marriages and have 2-parent households and these things, it's going to take for all of us to shift our perspective to realize that women don't have to be all the things and men can protect. So that's what I hear when we say protect Black women. I hear that there's a shift happening in the atmosphere, and for Black women to not be Miss Independent, then the men have to be equipped enough to step back into their protector role, which makes this podcast even more important because believe it or not, when we first met, I think it was maybe, we talked recently a couple months ago, but we met maybe over a year ago. And I remember that's when I was really big in just women. But recently I have begun to do coaching programs and classes for Black men specifically, so then they can have a safe space to share how they feel, to share what's going on, what's happening. Like, I feel like in order for them to protect us, they have to feel protected. So I've created that spaces of allowing Black men to feel protected so that they can lower their guard. You guys have pain and hurt as well when it comes just to the different things. Like, imagine if you had children with the love of your life and then y'all fell on hard times. You guys was able to find housing, but then you hear, well, you can't be there. How that's messing up with you guys' psyche and things too. So I feel like protecting Black women is twofold. It is allowing for women to not be all the things, but it's for Black men to learn how to be a man that's Black so that he can protect the Black women.
So this next, usually I'll be honest, what I don't want to flip it. I want to stay on just because this podcast is about men. Usually I would ask, well, how could Black women create a safe space for them? So on and so forth. I think I've asked that before. So we're going to stick with Black women. So my question to be is, let's do what we got, right? You said that the average a Black or African American woman in these days times have been forced to be hardened to be that independent woman. So let's fast forward and get past. You know what? Let's go with the dating and courting stage, right? How am I? Let's just make the assumption that I'm the average Black male. like you said, let's take me for instance. Forget it. I am more progressive than not, right? There are things I understand from being in therapy, but there are some things I'm still learning. Like I said, I just didn't believe it was beyond my comprehension to believe that this many assaults and harassments are happening in succession. Like it's happening very rapidly. I've met too many women, let's just say that, in the past like couple of months that have told me stories. Um, what are some of these? What are some of the actions that may be passive aggressive or even overtly aggressive that some men are doing that could be considered either sexual assault or harassment? And then I would like you, from your professional standpoint, to explain coercion. So let's start with teach the people what's the difference. Some men literally don't know the difference. So let's start there. What is the difference between sexual harassment and sexual assault?
Okay. So the difference between the two is harassment is I'm doing behaviors that is making you uncomfortable and it's repetitive. And it's one of those things where even if it's that first time, then I'm continuously to do it. And then the actual assault piece is there's an actual physical action that has taken place. So whether that was you touching yourself, you touching someone else without permission, once that no has been communicated, or if there's been a push away, if there has not been a specific consent, like sometimes there are women who are multiple victims, right, of multiple times. And we communicate to them like, hey, why don't you talk to that person and say, until I actually say yes, then it's no consent at all. Like sometimes it gets to that point. So that's the difference. The harassment is I haven't necessarily physically forced myself on you. Mm-hmm. Now I may have touched you, I may have tapped your butt. Like there's these, like you said, passive aggressive. There's these passive aggressive things. And I don't want it to just be, it's not just women. Let me put that out there. Sexual assault is not just a women only thing. There are men that are also sexually assaulted and molested. So I don't want to give off the thing that this is just a woman thing. This is a person thing. And as far as coercion, assault, how it show up, all these things, there's a lot of people right now that is passive aggressive. And I'm going to tell you how. We now have a thing called social media. On social media, I can be whatever I want to be. I can say whatever I want to say. And then sometimes I feel like I don't need to be held accountable. So I'll give you a prime example. I'm a very just loving person. I'm an individual that if I am close with you, I'm going to check in with you. I'm going to make sure you're good. I'm going to make sure you're okay. However, recently I've had people that I've done that with that had the role of like an uncle, or they've been in my life for a long period of time, but then they begin to get comfortable. So now it turns from, oh, she's my niecey that is trying to get business stuff together, to now I have an attraction because now she's a woman. So now it goes from, hey, friend, to hey, beautiful, hey, gorgeous. And then instead of commenting on my actual pictures on my platform, because I'm married, now you're sending your comments via inbox. Oh, that was beautiful. Oh, I wish this. Or this is happening. Like that's grooming a person to see how far I'm gonna be able to take that.
And people, I'll be honest, men prey on the downfall. I've heard. Listen, I don't care what the homies say. I've heard y'all say it, and it's obvious. Oh, dang, she got a man. That's okay. It probably ain't gonna last. You still gonna like. You still gonna comment. You still gonna DM. What y'all doing? Oh, that was cute. He took you there. Oh, okay. I guess that's cute. You just sticking around, and plenty of men used it, and men and women can be platonic friends. I do believe that. I've had my own experience where that's not actually the truth. So in therapy, I'm trying to wrap myself around that being actuality, bringing that into reality. That's possible, but there's a lot of homies that play that friend role, sit and wait, and they're being a predator. That's predatory. There we go. Let's get another word in there. You're being a predator. Period. I don't care. Now, moving forward. So, again, I don't want you to divulge. You say you're speaking to a lot of women and Black women and lately. That's pretty much. I appreciate. I think God's timing is supernatural because there does need to be divine feminine and sacred masculine. There needs to be a connection there. I appreciate that. But moving forward with the conversation of coercion, I think that is important because I think that's with the new age. That's what's happening. I think there's a man who is completely ignorant and just straight up sexual assaulting women. There are men who are not. But I think what we need to talk about is the gray area because we can't account for the men who are just straight up blatantly doing it and not. It's the gray area that's going to be confused. And those men in the gray area use quote coercion. And I've had a young lady tell me she was assaulted, like straight up raped. And she literally said out of her mouth, she said, "It's okay. I shouldn't have went." I literally said out my mouth, I'm like, first off, that doesn't matter. One, because you can make a decision to go somewhere and someone still shouldn't legitimately rape you. Two, that's a separate act. He still committed the act. So those things are separate. She was like, "Nah, it's okay. It don't matter. And I'm fine anyway." I'm like, I didn't want to press the issue because she's pretty young. I didn't want to be like the dad. That's another problem issue for me as a man, right? I probably should have kind of, gave a little more insight. I kind of did, but I kind of dropped it because it's beating a dead horse. I was trying to let her know, like, "Did you call the police?" That's the first thing I said. I said, "Did you call the police?" She's like, "Nah, it's not serious." I'm like, "You need to get him locked up. You're telling me you got raped." She's like, "No, it's okay." And what she told me he did was he lives in her apartment complex. He's been making comments. He's like, "Hey, where you at? You live here? You live fine. This and that and third. How old are you?" And he was like, "Do you smoke? Do you drink?" And then she got over there due to that. That's another red flag should look out. If they're bringing in substances that can be abused, that's not too healthy, right? People should look out for that. And then natural thing happened. He started touching. She was like, "She's not here for that." She told him, she's like, "I'm not here for that. I told you I'm not here for that." He was like, "Oh man, well, you over here." The assault happened. So give some real life examples from your point of view, from a woman's standpoint, that are coercive. What are some things men say that are kind of, like you said, they're grooming, but it needs to be more outward spoken?
Absolutely. So for me, personal experience, and I definitely understood what that young lady was feeling like. Number one, what we see on TV a lot of the times dictate if we speak. So for example, I am into emergency TV. So there's a show called Station 19. And currently on the show, one of their lieutenants got sexually assaulted outside of a bar or something like that. But before the gentleman can actually penetrate her and get to her, she literally punched him in the throat and ran away. So the guy dies because of her training that she had. He died. And now it was the thought of, well, if you were a paramedic and you heard him do that, why didn't you go and save him? And she's like, "I didn't know if he was going to assault me or not. Like, I'm trying to get away." So even with watching that, it's like the message that you're giving little girls that see that is, if it happens, don't say nothing. So when I was 16 and I was sexually assaulted, the way coercion works is, for those individuals, the person who did it to me, he was a chronic victimizer, which I didn't know. We was both the same age. We were talking and all of that. But then I started sharing with him kind of where I was, because at the time I was celibate. Listen, y'all, I have a story. Let's just say I lost my virginity at 13. So I was doing things for a while. And for about a year and a half, I was like, "No, I'm not going to do that anymore. This is not what I'm trying to do." And this person knew that. So that was the conversation. It was like, "Hey, I'm looking for someone to love." And again, I'm young. So this was my story as a little girl. Like, "Hey, I just want somebody to love. I don't mind if we go out. I don't want to do anything." That was the conversation. So then we finally did go on a date, and it was a double date. And I remember after the date, he got like real silent. It was like during the movie, you holding my hand. We went to Walmart. Mind you, we little. So we went to Walmart. You holding my hand. You love me. We get in the car, and now he's like in his feelings. He moved over to the whole side. So here's him playing the game, but me being so naive, I didn't realize it. So we get to his house. I walked him up to his door because I rode with a friend of mine. And when I walked him to the door, then he started doing first and second base. Mind you, it's been a year and some change. So when you start doing those things, you're human. And that's one thing people don't talk about. Your human body is going to respond to certain stuff. So then that messes up your mind too, because parts of it is like, I'm being raped, but then part of it, I may like it. And it's a bunch of other things that's going on through your brain. So here I am, first, second base. I'm okay with that. You know, you going to go in your house. We good. I, for many years, at least 10, blamed myself because I was okay with first and second base. So when he says, hey, my homie stay down the street, let your girl drop him off, you come in, she gonna be right back in like 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, I'm okay with first and second base. My homegirl gonna come right back. That was my mind. But that was him coercing me because he already knew what I said I was trying to do. So one thing people don't understand is a lot of the times people get victimized not by the stranger that's standing behind a trash can in the alleyway. It's the friend, it's the family member, it's the person that know what you're trying to do and what not to do. So then I go into this house and I get sexually assaulted. And for years, I blamed myself because I just thought that I had enough control at first and second base. That was cool. But when he wanted a home run, it wasn't. And my way of trying to get somebody's attention was his grandma was there. So I start screaming and he thought it was something else. Then I go home. Parents don't say anything. That's the story. But I share that to say in that moment, I didn't go to the police. I didn't get taken to the hospital. And the sad part is my mom was also sexually assaulted before as well. But because nobody showed up for her, when I'm sitting here a whole hour late, blood drenching down my pants, and I'm like, I was torn down. There was still nothing that happened. So I think a big part of it in our community is we need to learn how to respond when those situations happen so that victims are more prone to say this happened to me when it happened and not years down the line. I didn't say anything until it was too far for any investigation or any of those things. And then we also need to change television. Like television needs to share what should happen. I understand that they're giving the legitimate, but we got to begin to change how the police deal with our women. We got to change how the judges question women. We got to change how if you are sexually assaulted, you should be assigned a victim advocate, not have to ask for one, but get one. So then when you are coerced and you have them people in that gray area, like the old uncles that now they see your butt showing, they see your boobs developing, and now they want to talk to you, then you'll know what to say or you'll know what to do. And it's very sad because people are becoming more victims and don't even realize it. Like imagine if I wasn't trained in these things while I had this uncle figure talking to me and we had this business meeting. What would have happened then if I didn't know, okay, wait, that's a red flag. That's something. Or if I didn't have a sister circle where I was like, look, I'm having these conversations with this person, but it's a little iffy. Can you read it? And then they say, no, Malara, you don't need to talk to that person. So I think it comes down to we have to create, again, it goes back to that safe space. We have to create a safe space for men and women to share when they're having these experiences or when things are uncomfortable or if they have a question about it and be able to share that so then we can start protecting each other from being victimized.
Okay, great. I can't apologize for all men across the board, but when you're having a human experience, I would say, I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm glad you got the healing, the starting of healing, continuous of healing that you needed. Yeah, I can empathize, so to speak. My next question is the moment at which harassment. So we're talking about the sexual assault. Let's talk about sexual harassment. For what can men actually do? So let me speak my piece. This is what I've said before, but since I've had these past 3 conversations with the young women, I'm like, I'm gonna be more active, right? The thing I said before those conversations we had was a young lady is a stranger to me in a social setting. We're in a bar. I see a man who's either belligerent or not, and he's being a little too handsy. He grabs your hand, he grabs your wrist. You look uncomfortable. My first thought is women expect some man to come in with the Superman complex to come in and just be like, hey, that's wrong. I'm here to commit to justice. What is an actual realistic way for a man to intervene? And what are the signs a woman could show that she's uncomfortable that lets us know that we should intervene in that instance.
Mm-hmm. So I was gonna say, I'm gonna answer your question, but it's gonna sound a little radical. The way that a man can intervene is when you're a boy. Before you become the handsy man at the bar. Because again, one thing that I've talked to my husband about, and him and I, we both had sexual trauma. But one thing I, learned from him, he said that was the conversation. The conversation was about how many women could you get? How many girls can you lay down? Who gonna get her first? Who did you, and I know this is a podcast, but who did you do base 1, 2, 3, and 4 with? Like, that was the conversation as boys. So then when you become an adult that sees an actual woman and you're at a bar and you're intoxicated and you're all those things, you're going to act on the conversations that you had. So my suggestion is, men, change your conversation and actually talk about protecting women. Look at that woman if she was your daughter or your mom. Like, really begin to shift. Like, women can't just be this piece of meat. Like, she has to be a human being. And I'm not saying all men look at women in that way. But if your conversation is, well, when I'm going to lose my virginity, who can I tap first? Who can I do that? Like, if that's what the conversation in the men's circle is, and there's nothing concrete or consistent with logic, education, and other stuff, then we can't expect anything different. So then when you get into those situations, it's going to take men like yourself that's having conversations with women that's making you kind of uncomfortable. Like, well, dang, I didn't know that this was happening. Then now you will step in, you'll become more comfortable. So I feel like it starts with your conversations. It starts with what you're talking about. It starts with what's important to you. It will start with your value systems. And then if you don't have that and you see someone uncomfortable, just go and say, oh, hey, this is weird stuff, but you can go and say, hey, sorry I'm late, boo. Like, act like you're her boyfriend, and then let the boy, walk away.
I had an instance. I was in a, I think now that I can solidify, I said, I felt bad for not doing that, but I was confused at the moment because I didn't know. Like, I didn't know she knew him. I didn't know what was the dynamic. And another thing that makes it confuse us is y'all have to play the role of comfortability. So physical abuse doesn't happen. So murder doesn't happen. A stabbing doesn't happen. So I ain't gonna lie, I was confused. She was being flirtatious. She was smiling. She was patting him on his elbow. I was like, And then another thing that we as men have to stop is the cock blocking shit. Like, first thing, that is guy code. I'm not gonna lie, that's a part of the reason why. If you look at a man making his attempt, the cock blocking dumb shit comes in and is like, I don't want him to be. Really, we're risking our lives. That's the real question. Like, should men risk their lives? Because he gets belligerent. I'm putting my life in the line for a stranger. Let's just be honest. People, us as human beings, don't do that. We're particular to our own tribe. We grow with our own tribe, and then there's strangers. Like, we're not in a superhero movie. Superman doesn't exist. Batman doesn't exist. But for the sake of protecting Black women, I thought about doing that. I thought about saying, hey, sorry, they ain't got no drinks. I was like, what do you want? Who is this? I'm like, nah, bro, we good. Yeah, she's good. And I think I might try to do that actually, because I'm on the side now where it's just like, it's getting nasty. Like, it's really happening at a hyper rate. Like, it happens more than we as men want to admit. And then some of their homies, that's another thing. There's a lot of homies in the friend group where it's the homie where he's being nasty, just like, and no one wants to do it because he's your homie since 5. Y'all been hooping since y'all was 5. Y'all been talking about women since y'all was 13, since first, and we've been watching porn. Porn is another thing. Like, it's nasty. Like, So, 2 questions. You spoke about the entertainment industry, in not in short, but how do you plan to attack or intervene into this industry, and where you hope to change, so to speak? What's your plan of action?
So my plan of action is I have my Metamorphosis Experience program, and it's a 6-week program that works with individuals of influence that have made it in life, but that mental part of it is keeping them from living in heaven. One thing about Hollywood, and I have a few people that I've met that's in Hollywood, it's just a brutal industry. And if you already go in with trauma and then you have to act like you're somebody else at all times, you got to act this character, act this name, then you begin to lose sight. So what my role is to do is to go in and remind them of who they really are, to remind them of their strengths, their weaknesses, take off the mask, get to a place where they can just get butt ass naked, not really, but in their mind, so that they can begin to really change. So then they will think twice before they accept an actual acting gig. They will think twice before they sing that song that was written by that songwriter. They will think twice, especially with politicians as well. That's another space I want to go into, before actually giving that bill, that goal. Like, they will say, anything that I do is actually ministering to other people. And it don't even have to be about Christian ministering, but you're actually influencing other people around you. So if I can allow for you to tap into who you are and what your value system is, then I believe that that will shift some of the things that we're getting. So that's what I want to go in and
do. Okay. For the sake of my mind ran off with a lot of, because there is a lot of things in there. There's a lot of women, and as of late, Mr. Depp, Johnny Depp, is on trial against his former significant other, we'll say, and he's been dealing with something. So that world is I don't know, everyone says it's weird, but its own thing. It's like its own little time. It's like the army. It's like people talk about being on the inside or outside. It's like, are you in Hollywood or are you out? So the things that happen, and we can talk about Harvey Weinstein, all that good jazz. But for the sake of time, this is going to be my last question. Question. What are some resources for women? And if they are specific to Black women, I don't know, books to read, websites they should go to, or whatever it is that you're doing, that you feel free to promote. Free promo. That's what this is all about. Please extend those things and those services to the young women right now. And then we're going to go with the outro.
Okay. Well, here's one of the biggest resources for individuals who have experienced sexual abuse and assault. It's called RAINN.org, RAINN. And it provides you with all things statistics, all things support. It gives you a hotline there. You're able to find resources at that space. So that's one big resource. Also, I'm really good friends with the owner of Voices Beyond Assault. It's based in California. However, she services the world. She was a sexual assault victim that has now become a victor, and she helps people. And you can just follow them on Instagram. So Voices Beyond Assault. They're also on Facebook. And the owner, her name is Brianna. And she shares her story where she was brutally attacked and raped, and she utilizes it to help other women through that. So she is a certified sexual assault victim advocate. So she goes in and helps women with the process, so you don't have to do it alone. As far as for books and things to read, I have actually written Free Thyself, which is a book for healing for women who have experienced sexual abuse and assault. I also wrote a part of Speak Out. It was an anthology project. They both can be found on Amazon. I'm the only Malara Green there is. So if you type in the book and put by Malara Green, you'll be able to find it. And me right now, I have begun to work with people prior to them jumping off the building. The Miss USA thing really, really touched my heart and my soul. So what I do now is, before you get to that point, I have a lot of my clients who either just survived a suicide attempt or they've been thinking about suicide. Because either they were sexually assaulted or they were a victim of different things, or they have a substance abuse issue or things happening. So I have my metamorphosis experience. And like I said, that's the 6-week program to help people become unstuck and motivated to confidently reach your goals while owning your gifts. You're able to uncover who you really are. So before you make any big decisions, you're making it based off of what you desire, what's unique to you, and what makes you live. So you can go to www.malaratransforms.com to see all the services that I provide. I am a human being, so you're not going to get no robo. If you are trying to be friends with me on social media, on Facebook, I'm just Malara Green, or you can follow my business page, which is M Green Enterprises LLC. And then Instagram, Malara Transforms. But I am really in the business of helping people and allowing for them to see that life is so much better than death. And for those of you who are Christian like myself, I've been giving people the visualization of when Jesus took his last breath, he whispered your name. So that thing that you're beating yourself up for, he already paid ransom with his blood for it. So if you're literally saying, I can't live my life because I did this, even to those who have victimized people, that's one thing we didn't get an opportunity to talk about is I was a victim, but from 3 to 13, I also showed other people what I was exposed to. So essentially, I was the victimizer for a time, and I have to deal with that the rest of my life. So even for you, I am someone that will talk with you without judgment because I know sometimes you do learn behavior. So that's enough about me, what I got going on, and the different resources. But please reach out to me, 757-609-0694. If you just need someone to help you start your process, I'm willing to link you with whatever therapist you need, whatever coach you need. If you just need a hug and a friend, I'm willing to connect with you.
Amen. 7 cities in the buildings, 2 up, 2 down. Where are you? Hampton, the real HU to all the representatives. I real HU. I love y'all, Hampton to the Pirates. What's up? Yeah, I'm a native. But yeah, thank you. You know what? I got one. I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna get a precursor. Do you think you could define therapy in less than in 45 seconds?
I sure can. Therapy is a trash can. Everybody needs a trash can to dump their emotional shit on so that you will stop vomiting on your family and your friends.
Amen. And that's it. That's a wrap. Thank you for coming. It's another one. This conversation went pretty with this only for the last 2 conversations I have, the interviews I had, they went pretty smooth. I mean, thank you for your time. Quite informational. That's what this is for. I like to give out information, statistics, references, right? People need to learn because, like I said, they're not gonna watch this and say, now I need to go to therapy. Now I need a therapist. I need them to get their food, get their nutrients and vitamins right here in this conversation. So thank you, Mrs. Green. I appreciate you. You gave your social media. All of her information is going to be in the description, of course. Make sure you follow, support, and spread the word. Don't just do that. Let other people know. The healing needs to be spread. But thank you once again. Peace, love, and positivity to you, Queen. And I hope you have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Peace and love to you as well.